sense of what they're doing right now to combat this crisis and how they're planning on growing over time and what they're learning during this process or during this time frame. So today, we're very blessed to have Scot Eckley on from Scot Eckley Inc. out in Seattle, Washington. He's a landscape architect. He studied landscape in Boston and Mexico and Italy, and I love his work. We have a similar design aesthetic with a very nice, clean look. So had to have him on today and see what he's doing out there in Seattle. So yeah, I'm going to stop talking here and say, Scot, welcome aboard. How you doing?
I'm great. Hello, everybody. I've got to make a clarification. I'm not a landscape architect. One of my degrees is in landscape architecture,
Okay.
but I consider myself a garden and landscape designer.
Perfect. That's awesome.
So,
Thanks for the
yeah,
clarification.
I'm sitting out here on my back porch. Seattle is, we're on a mandatory stay-at-home order with the governor, so the kids are inside. Getting homeschooled from my wife, and yeah, this is my new office for a
Nice.
few more weeks.
It's not bad when you have a commute that's only a few steps, right?
But I have two offices. In the morning, I get up usually at 7 o'clock. I'm in the basement working, and then the kids come down there and they do this cosmic yoga for before breakfast, and I go upstairs and work in the bedroom for the rest of the day. So I kind of have to split between two offices to keep busy and keep out of everybody's hair.
That's perfect. I really think that once this corona lets up, I think that there's going to be a lot more people working from home by choice. Because there's so many benefits to having that comfort and all your creature comforts around you, and being able to still produce and work. So I think that's really cool. So so I guess first question for you is, how did you get started in this industry? What sparked your interest?
Yeah, I kind of got into it from the back door. And at one summer in college, I was getting a degree in English literature, and I really wanted to work outside. And I knew I wouldn't cut it as a lifeguard. And I'm like, well, what else do you do if you want to work outside? And I'm like, well, you kind of work for a landscaper. So
Yeah.
I was really fortunate at the time. I had a buddy who worked for a landscaper, and this guy was installing Paul Allen's estate. And Paul Allen's one of the co-founders of Microsoft with Bill Gates, and he was having this beautiful estate installed on a place called Mercer Island. And I went to work for this guy, and I just immediately saw what beautiful gardens and landscapes were. So I just got really lucky. At the time, I wanted to study fashion design. But I ended up working for this guy for another 4 years as I finished college. And slowly my interest shifted away from fashion design to wanting to study garden and landscape design.
It's really, really cool. And it almost seems like a big gap between the two, but as a designer, I can get it. When you're designing, you can design anything, right? It's just a matter of understanding how to look at it critically and also aesthetically, right?
Yeah, to me, it's like they're so similar. You're just manipulating kind of fabric, and do I put a seam in here or a dart in here, or do I put a little wall here to create a sunken area? It's manipulation, and it's kind of controlling the outcome you want.
That's really, really cool. That's neat. That really sounds like a great way to start too. It's like you said, from the back door, right? So you can never plan this stuff out, and things just happen in life, and you go with them, and pretty soon you look back and it's 20 years later and you're loving life, right? So
exactly.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you have a specialty, Scot? Something you absolutely love to do?
I wouldn't say we have a specialty, but our approach, we're strictly and unapologetically a design build company, and we focus on making great outdoor living spaces in the immediate Seattle area. And that's, the last few years has been the filter that we run all of our leads through. And I'm kind of a strong believer of kind of like having your niche and not being a lane changer and not saying yes to every opportunity that comes towards you. And I've lectured about this before, and I've gone to landscape conferences and talked about this. And I'm now going to be really tested, because we're in a period of just complete uncertainty. Nobody knows how this is going to play out. A lot of us have a lot of ideas. But the question that I have in my mind is like, man, am I going to stick to kind of the vision and the niche that I've been developing for this company, and do we kind of keep focusing on that, or am I going to panic and be like, oh man, no, I'm going to start saying yes to this project and this project because I don't know where the next job is coming from.
Mhm.
um, so but to get back to your question, it's like, I guess, yeah, our specialty is just building great outdoor living spaces in the immediate Seattle area, and the more complicated and challenging the site, the better we do.
That's really, really cool. But you hit on something that's interesting because a lot of us have ideas about how we see our company as a more ideal ideas, right? We're thinking like, this is what we want to do. We only want to service this client or do these kinds of projects or only work with those budgets. But during times like this, when jobs are more scarce, the question is, you stick with that or do you adjust in order to make payroll? Like that's a question I'm sure a lot of people think about when they're handling it as a business owner. Like, what is it going to be? Is one or the other, or do you have to choose, or you just say, look, I'm staying straight with what we're going to do, and that's that, or we're going to be able to flex it a little bit. So I think that's everybody's choice, but it's interesting to see how you're holding it, how you're
Yeah.
doing it. It's really cool. So tell us a little bit about your business model. You mentioned design build before. Do you design for other contractors, or just you guys design and build? Do you have crews in house? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so we're unapologetically a design build client. So
Yeah.
um, we have a design staff. We have 2.5 designers. I consider myself like the half designer. Maybe I'm a quarter
I can
designer
ask
these
you about
days.
that.
Um, we have a project manager. We
Yeah. Okay.
have 10, 12 guys on the crew, and then an office manager. And the reason I say we're kind of unapologetically a design build client is company I mentioned earlier. In our early years, we were lane changers. We said yes to every opportunity that came along, whether it was to pave horse barns with like rubber pavers and put
Yeah.
down 10,000 square feet of pavers, or to go work remotely in some part of the state. And it was just, we ended up with a business that was kind of just fledgling, and we didn't really have control over it. And so
Yeah.
over the last few years, we've really focused on being a design build company. And for us, what's been a great benefit to that is, from our very first interaction, when a client initially calls me, I actually don't even get on the phone with them. Uh, we have a really good process where our office manager takes the call, and then we email that client an introductory email. And in that introductory email, I outline basically kind of what it takes to work with us. Um, Not in a negative way, but everything's kind of framed very positively. But I say, listen, we're a design build company, and that's where we do our best work. Um, and we're not a build only company. We're not a design only company. I tell people what we're going to talk about at our very first consultation, that will give you lots of ideas. We might even make sketches. We're going to give you talk about budget at the first meeting. So you walk away from that meeting with an understanding of what your project could cost. Um, and so we lay out all these things in an introductory email. And then the close of the email says, is like, we hope this is kind of on track with all your expectations. If so, let's set up a time to meet, and let's meet on, next Thursday at 3 o'clock. So at that point, if a client responds to that email, they're choosing us, and
Yeah.
we think that they're potentially a really good fit for us. And in that introductory email, we also outlined the fact that our design turnaround is 3 months. And
Okay.
before this current chapter, we were booked out for 6 months. And so if somebody didn't want to wait 6 months, they wouldn't reply to that email. So we had like this great process of kind of pre-qualifying clients. So then when they respond back, we know that they've already kind of cleared this first hurdle.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's one of the most kind of important things in kind of our design build process. The other thing for us that has been um, such a great way of doing business over the last couple of years is we've written, and we're starting to rethink this because of the current state of the world, but it's not always going to be COVID-19. And at some point, we're going to get back um, to, uh, working as we were before. And we write our design contract, since we're a design build client. When somebody signs an initial design build, we call it a design build engagement contract. We asked for a $6,000 to $8,000 retainer up front, and it's really important for us to have a client that has skin in the game. And so we don't ask for a $1,500 or $2,000 deposit for them. It's easy for them to walk away from. We ask for a more significant deposit because what we tell them, again, we're a design build company, and this retainer gets the design process started. It also gets a place for you on our construction schedule.
Nice.
Um, and historically, then that makes it really clear to clients. Like if they're kind of interested in the design, but they aren't sure if they're going to move through to construction, um, they're not going to send that in, and they're not going to waste their time, or they're not going to waste our time. So that's something that up to COVID-19 has always been um, just really helped us to um, focus in on those clients that we know want to move from design quickly into construction.
That's great. And that's a great way to do it for sure. Do you have a lot of pushback with clients? I know they've already gone through that email process, but do you have people that say, look, I don't even know what you can give me yet. I don't even know what a design would look like from you. So how can I commit to that before I even see what the goods are? Do you ever have that?
No, I mean, so we send out that initial email that makes it really easy for clients to say, oh, I'm interested in the next step or not. And
Yeah.
then when I go out and meet with the client for an initial consultation, by the end of that meeting, I will have like written out a high level probable cost budget for them.
Yeah.
Uh, and, I'll meet with, I'll go over that. And I'll be like, hey, based on everything we just talked about, this could be a $150,000 project. And I'll tell them, we're going to have $25,000 in demo. You're going to have $30,000 in paving. You're going to have $5,000 for a gas line for your fire feature. I'll break down all these line items, and I tell them, listen, this is not meant to be an ending point. This is really a starting point. But I want you to see, based on everything we've talked about, that this could be a $150,000 garden or landscape. And then that gives them the chance. And I tell them, it's like, I want your feedback. I want
Yeah.
you to tell me right now, hey, this is what I was thinking. Or I want you to be like, oh man, I had no idea. My budget was $20,000.
Yeah.
Uh, and then, you know, we haven't wasted time on design. Sometimes there's a chance that we can, shift with the client and tell them, like, listen, we don't have to do this patio as stone paving. It could be crushed stone paving, and there can be a lot of work on the spot. And then we'll go back to the office. We'll send them that proposal. But it's not a proposal, excuse me. We call it a good faith project estimate and scope. But that's kind of the piece, if they hire us, that we use that as a guide as we're designing, and we're trying to really design to their budget, because we only have a client once in every 10 years that says, I don't have a budget, just design what I want and I'll figure out how to pay for it. So our process is really geared to putting budget first, and I think it'll become even more important when as we start meeting people after this. What I think is so good about talking to clients about budget face to face is they see how quick I am on my feet. And if they're like, oh, Scott, I didn't know this could be $100,000. Like I can come up with a $60,000 really great solution for them on the spot during that initial conversation,
Yeah.
or during that initial consultation. So they see that I'm engaged with the design. I'm a pretty energetic and fun and quick guy, um, and the more ideas and visions that I can give to them, I think of each one of those as like make little fish hooks that I'm just trying to like hook into them and connect with them. So when I go meet somebody for the first time, I block out 2 hours for that consultation, and I'm happy to give them everything I have in that 2 hours. I'll do
Yeah.
sketches, I'll have paint, I'll paint lines on the ground. Because again, I think of it as a first date. And on a first date, what do you want to do? You want to just offer true representation. of who you are. And I know there are a lot of designers that like, no, I'm not going to give anybody any design ideas until we've met or until they've hired me. But I just think, um, you want to learn as much about your client in that first
Yeah.
consultation as well.
Yeah. No, it's definitely super important to know that information ahead of time, because you can gauge your conversation if they give you a laundry list of things that they want built, but that, if you can figure out how to get to a point where their highest priorities, then you can focus your attention on that and build around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But having that long conversation with them in the beginning is very important. And you nailed it with budget. There's so many that, and I'm even guilty of this years ago, was to go into a project with no idea what budget is. And then you just start talking about all these grandiose ideas, and these, lazy river showed up, and then the next thing you know, there's a grotto involved, and you're like,
Yeah.
they're all cool, but they have no clue that they just added whatever $100,000 to the project, and you're just thinking like they're in Disneyland and everything is free. So having a sense of that focus is really good, and having that budget ahead of time, then you can gauge your conversations, and it's super important. It's really cool that you guys are doing it that way. It's really good. We have some people here online that we have. Let's see. My mom's watching. Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Joe Salemi's here. Kyle Stevens is here. Dwayne's watching. We have Robert and Suzanne. Lisa Port's watching. And Tina's watching too. Hey, guys. How you doing? Any questions? Let us know. I'm watching the feed here, so we can answer them as we roll along. But next question here is, who is your ideal client?
Sorry, I missed you for a second. I'm on my cell phone. I had an incoming call.
No worries. Who is your ideal client? If you could pick one client to work with every day for the rest of your life, what would they look like? What do they eat? What do they think about? Like, how do you gauge that?
So my ideal client is somebody that lives in the immediate Seattle area. We have horrible traffic, and we don't want to work outside of the city. And it's somebody that wants to expand their outdoor living space. And it's somebody that has done a remodel project before and understands that then a remodel or construction project, and they understand the cost. They understand that there can be kind of complications or schedules can get off because of subcontractors. So they have experience doing that. And then they understand that it's more important to hire kind of partnership over price.
Okay. It's a big one. It's a real big one.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
For us, we feel that we have a really good sales process. And after that initial consultation, we have, we're at a point where we really know if a client would be a good client for us, kind of or not. And, we're happy to do $30,000 projects. In some ways, those are so much more profitable for us because the variables, they're much less variables, and we're not fighting for a quarter of an inch, as we're building complicated things.
Yep, of course. And some of your stuff is very, very complicated and high detail. So I can see that being kind of a respite, having a project where you can go in and be like, you know what, if they're a foot off, no one's going to notice. This is great. What I mean? It's very free flowing that way. That's really cool. Where do you find is your best way to find clients? These ideal clients you talk about. What are some of your streams of those? Where do you find them?
This is what's pretty scary. Is we have been so blessed over the last kind of 15 years. It's like all been word of mouth. And
good.
We haven't got any calls for the last 2 weeks. And in fact, it had been we usually have an uptick in calls and inquiries right when we go back to work, after the holiday break. And this year it's been really quiet. And so I'm having to kind of rethink that. And I am kind of concerned. I've been a little bit foolish or naive thinking that, we'll always have projects that find us out. So this is one of my big kind of problems and challenges that I'm really kind of thinking about.
Yeah. It never really becomes a problem until everything changes in a week, right?
Exactly.
I mean, when does that ever happen? That's crazy. A couple of these questions you're kind of answering as we're going here. So How are you guys specifically handling the shutdown in Seattle? Tell us how the shutdown, what it looks like for you guys, what you can and can't do, and how you're handling it.
Yeah, well, it looks like you're sitting on your back porch having a Zoom or Skype call. you know, um, so um, so our governor has mandated a stay-at-home order, and he's extended it till May 4th.
Okay,
And you're going to get me standing on my soapbox for a second.
go for it.
Because they're and he's made it really clear that residential construction is not an essential service, and that we're supposed to stay home. So residential construction, landscaping, um, there are a lot of there's yahoos next door to me working on a remodel. I had a client that emailed me today, and she's like, hey, there are a lot of landscapers in our neighborhood, like, can you guys get back out here? And we're like, absolutely not. We have a civic duty right now to help contain the spread of this like life-killing virus. Um, and so our company has, we've taken the stance like we have a civic duty right now, and until the governor makes it very clear that we can go back to work, we're not going back to work. Um, so what does it look like for us right now? We're trying to minimize our cash. Um, yeah, we're trying to minimize the cash flow going out of the business. Um, all of we have gone through and we have deferred all of our um, term monthly payments. So our trucks, we've put on a 90-day deferral. We have one loan that we put on a 90-day deferral. Um, we've canceled our trash service, which is $600 a month. We've
Wow.
canceled the bottled water service. So we've kind of clamped down on our expenses.
Mhm.
But right now, we're paying any like reoccurring monthly expense, not that's not a term loan. So like our rent, health insurance, um, insurance on cars, trucks, vehicles. We're paying that right now. Um, all of our crews are laid off. Um, we've applied for the payroll protection plan loan. So we're waiting to hear back on that. We are shoring up all of our current um, design projects that we think are going to go into construction. So we're talking to all those clients, giving them the opportunity to say, "Hey, stop. We want to hold on this project until next year."
Mhm.
Because right now we're paying the designers out of savings.
Okay,
And I want to make sure that they're working on projects that are going to feed the jobs that the guys go back to.
absolutely.
We're writing and developing new social distancing policies for when we go back to work, because I fundamentally believe it's like the shadow of this is going to be over us for the next 18 months. I feel like
Yeah,
we started a basketball game and we're in the first 5 minutes.
yeah.
Um, and we're starting to hear about the curve that's flattening a little bit. And I'm really scared that people are going to think that, oh my gosh, now we're up by 10 points, and everything's going to be okay. But it's like, no, man, we're just in the first 5 minutes of the game. We're still in the first quarter. Um, so we're thinking about how our crews are going to be able to go back to work. We are making very strategic decisions about designing projects where everything can be done by one person. So we do a lot of steel work out here, and we're now sizing all of our pieces of steel so one person can carry them,
Wow.
and so we can maintain that social distancing. Because I guarantee you, if when Seattle goes back to work, or if we can go back to work on May 4th, these social distancing requirements, they're going to be with us for a long time. They're going to come back next winter.
Yeah.
So that's something worth really thinking about. We're changing the structure of our crews. Um, we do a lot of projects in small spaces, so we're shifting to two-person crews and starting an additional project.
Okay.
Um, uh, and then yeah, we're starting to meet with clients on Zoom meetings.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I mentioned that my degrees in landscape architecture. I mean, this is a degree from 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when we used to, you know, render things by hand. And I'm, I love a beautiful hand rendered drawing. To me, it's like they're so beautiful. Um, but what's been great about this is we now aren't doing that, and the designers are rendering them in Photoshop, and we've come up with some new ways to just kind of standardize our drawings, and they're getting done faster, and they look great. And so,
Good.
one of the things is I mean, I'm excited about all the innovation that's going to happen, um, and I'm really excited to see like what our lives are going to look like, you know, in 2 years because of this. You know, I had our first client meeting on Zoom this morning, and it went great. And when I got off, Pam, the designer, and I stayed on the call and talked about it. And we were saying, "Oh, this is so great." And she was like, "You know, Scott, we could have a meeting with a client at 8 o'clock in the evening after work if it was over Zoom. You know,
Yep.
where we don't have to drive to their client to their house, which is something I've stopped doing. I stopped doing 3 years ago because we have two little kids, and I'm like, you know, I'm not going to give up work time, or I'm not going to give up family time for work. It's too precious to me. But I could see now where I'd offer up a client, yeah, I'll meet you, you know, Wednesday evening for an hour for a Zoom call, and we'll go over all this stuff. So that's exciting to me. You know, a couple other things that we're doing as a company. um, I've got a company text chain just between everybody in the company. We're not a big company, 18 people. And I text everybody something each day, or different people put up pictures or things. And I just want to stay in touch.
It's
Um,
good.
I'm trying to call everybody on the crew within a week. I try and just have a personal conversation with everybody. I think that's really important. And then I tell the guys weekly what the office is still doing. I want them to see that there's still like momentum, and there's still work getting done in the office, and there's going to be work that they have to come back to.
Yeah.
And then we're sending out just a company wide email each week, um, updating everybody on whatever information that we know is kind of factual and true as it relates to our company. And this week we're going to kind of update the email we're going to send is like, hey, you guys, we're planning to go back to work on May 4th. We're going to have these jobs. These crews are going to be assigned to these jobs. We're working on our social distancing, or kind of new social distancing policies. And we're just going to kind of spell out everything we have in place so people can start to visualize themselves coming back to work, but in a slightly kind of different environment. So it's not going to be a big surprise to them. Um,
I love that, Scott. That's such a
yeah.
good idea because they feel like they're still part of the ecosystem, but they're not kind of set out to the side. I'm sure a lot of employees feel that way. They're like, what the hell's going on? Are they going to have work for me when I come back? What does it look like, you know, in a month from now
Yeah.
when we're allowed to work again? So that's brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, because I'm scared, senseless. Like I'm nothing without these like amazing guys that work for
Yeah,
me, right?
absolutely.
And so it's really important for me that their mind doesn't start to wonder and be like, "Oh gosh, is are we even going to have a business to come back to?" So
Yep.
this text chain and calling people, it's like I want them to know, man, no, I'm here. I'm in the process of scheduling kind of a company wide dinner for October 1st. It's going to be at my
Nice.
house. We're going to rent, have a pizza company come and make pizzas, and I'm going to send out all the guys an invitation. It's like, no, we're going to get through this, and we're all going to meet here as a group with our
Love it.
families.
Love
We're
it.
going to like celebrate.
You're giving them hope, man. That's
Yeah,
huge.
absolutely.
That's huge. That's really, really cool. Good plan. Hey, we have Alan Burke is watching with us. We have Christopher, and let's see who else is on. We have Andrea's on here with us. Yeah, and Anna Brooks here says we're worried about that too, running out of work once we can get going again. So, you know, I think that's all on our minds here, thinking, man,
Yeah,
this is great building up. So hopefully we have some kind of a backlog from the winter time, you know, that we didn't get to build yet. You know, on the East Coast we do. I don't know about you guys out in the West Coast where you guys work a lot, you know, throughout most of the winter,
yeah,
but you know, we got a decent backlog. So once the gates open up, assuming they do, how long does it last if we don't get any new calls? That's a
yeah,
big question right now. What are you doing to get that phone to ring?
yeah. Well, I told you, I mean, this is something I've not thought about until these
Yeah.
last like few weeks. So Yeah, the thing that I'm kind of worried about is we have a little bit of a backlog.
Mhm.
Um, and if if things if there aren't kind of more big spikes in this, I can imagine that. I mean, first of all, I'm an optimist. I think we are so blessed, all of us, to be in the
Absolutely.
field of landscape
Mhm.
because I mean, there's so many reasons why right now. First of all, for design build companies, it's going to be a lot easier for us to go back to work, especially if we have, like I did, and I'm sure Alan does, have projects that just got stopped. Like,
Mhm.
we have plants on the side of somebody's house. So the moment that we're released to go back to work, like the very next day, we can go out and we can start planting and we'll have revenue coming in. Where if we had a restaurant, it's going to take us a number of days to open back up and to get
Yeah.
food. So then I think because we've all been at home, um, like people are going to, and again, I believe this shadow is going to be over us for 18 months, for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think people, as they start to get kind of more comfortable and they realize their finances are secure, I really think that there's an opportunity that people are going to be like, man, I do want like great spaces at
Mhm.
home, outdoor spaces to
Yeah.
like really enjoy. And so I
Yeah.
think there's a phenomenal opportunity to kind of capitalize on that. The thing that I don't know is like, how long is it going to take those people to kind of resurface? Is it at the
Yeah.
end of the summer? So I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, and the questions that I've been wondering, um, is like, okay, when do I start like rethinking my business? And is there a point where I would, cut down from 10 guys to 5 guys to stretch out the work that we have,
Mhm.
and thinking about like the long term kind of longevity and health of this company? Right now, we are really blessed and we've had 3 design build engagement contracts returned to us during the last few weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, I've people that we met like right at
Mhm.
the very end of our last working days. So I feel, you know, we've got 3 to 4 months worth of work for our whole company. And I know work is going to go slower when we get back to work
Mhm.
because we're going to have smaller crews on jobs. We're going to be doing social distancing. We're not going to be worried about profit this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's impossible to be thinking about profit. We're just thinking about sustainability. So, um, yeah, I think I kind of got off track.
No, it's good. All good stuff. Yeah, it's
Okay.
great. It's great. No, perfect. I know that you talk about this 18-month shadow, and
Yeah.
I was watching a webinar yesterday and they were talking about, think about movie theaters, right? All of a sudden, shutdown's over, movie theaters open back up. How many people are going to run out of their house and go sit in a movie theater, especially if you have to be 6 foot away from the person you went with? Like
Yeah.
that whole experience is different at that point. So those things are going to be a slow, transition back into the new normal, if you will, the after Corona economy, the new frontier, right? So everything is going to be different once this thing blows over. I mean, it's already different now, but it's not going to go back to what it was. It's not going to be like, the president says, go do whatever you want to do. And next thing you know, everybody's back to like business as usual. This is going to be ever etched into our minds and into our psychology. So yeah, it's going to be a slow. I think you're right. 18 months. I sure hope it's not that long, but I think you might be right. It's going to take time for people just to get out of this fear and panic mode, even if the economy, rears back up and goes back, in a bull, bull market. But it's still, there's still this sense of fear that's in the back of their mind. So the cool part for us as landscape designers, in outdoor living is people are stuck in their house and they're looking at all the stuff around their house that they like and don't like. The kids are driving them crazy at times. They're like, go outside, or I'm going outside, right? I think there's a
Absolutely.
tremendous value for us as designers to be able to help them live a better life at home. Because, think about it. Most people work really hard. They come home, they sleep, they eat, they go travel somewhere in the world, and they come back and they do that whole cycle over and over again, where now they're doing it at home. So it's it's more value to invest in their property, as long as they have money to invest, of course. Another thing I think as designers we need to be thinking about is, how are we creating outdoor living spaces that make it really easy and comfortable for them to work at home?
Yeah, I would.
Think about
As you were saying that, I think
it.
so important because I mean that's going to be an amazing thing that people realize that you can work at home.
Yeah.
Our company has been trying to move that way. We have some people that live on some of the islands that surround the Seattle area that commute 3 hours a day back and forth to work, and we'd already been doing. Um, they've been working one day at home, but this is just going to show everybody like no, you can do it, and the truth is your productivity is going to still be really high. And then yeah,
Yeah.
I just all of a sudden like great outdoor living spaces, it's going to be great to outdoor living and working spaces.
Exactly.
It's like,
Yep.
oh well, let's put a cover over that and a heater and maybe a couple more walls.
Yeah.
So I think
Yep.
it's a great opportunity. And
It
again, I
is.
think we're so blessed to
Yep.
be in this field that we're kind of, I think we're riding a lot the edge of a lot of I feel like yeah, I mean we're on the edge. We haven't fallen off like restaurants have and other businesses, and we're
Exactly.
we're still there. So
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that, I've been thinking about that for a while, and this just really brings it out, this whole concept of working from home, but outdoors, right?
yeah,
Creating those environments. You mentioned three walls, maybe one big one open out to the outside, and maybe there's a screen in the front side of that structure, right? So that you can
yeah,
control the insects, but you can be out there working 8 hours a day, feel like you're hanging out by your pool. I
yeah,
mean, that's really the life, right? You just traded cubicle life for backyard life, and you're still making money.
yeah,
So I think this event, this Corona pandemic, is going to really help shift companies' mindsets on: do we need a bigger office building, or we just let them work remotely? It worked before. It's
yep,
huge. It's
yeah,
huge. I mean, look
yeah,
at how much pollution that we're seeing. Cities where you can actually see distances now. You see that posted all over the place because there isn't as much combustible fuels being used. And I think this is not a. I mean, it's horrible now, but long term, we're going to look back and be like, thank God that happened,
yeah,
because it switched everything in our minds. We're ready to really embrace something that we were scared of before. So that's really cool. I'm excited by getting people more comfortable to work outside and make sure they got the comfortable spot and the Wi-Fi is tied in well and they can control the environment better. You mentioned heaters,
yeah.
things like that, to really make it more comfortable, because I see that being a big thing. Let's see here. How have you handled layoffs, or have you had any layoffs so far? And PPP, have you worked at all with that so far with your business?
Yeah. Um, so all the construction crew has been laid off. We have something in the state of Washington called standby layoff. That's
Okay.
where the day you apply for, or there's no waiting period to receive benefits. So you can start getting benefits the first day that you don't go back to work. Um, so all the guys are on standby unemployment, except for one guy chose not to. Um, and the way I handled that is um, I started talking to everybody like directly.
Mhm.
Um, I went to the job sites kind of a few days before and I told everybody, hey, this is our plan. This is what's going to happen. And I told them my personal opinion was that the governor was going to come down and have some sort of quarantine order. And hey, this is our plan. So I talked to everybody about that. Then
Mhm.
the night that the governor announced this, like I got on the phone and I called everybody in the company. I'm like, hey, you've probably heard, like, this is what we're going to do. We're going to follow his order. Everybody on the crew is going to be laid off as of this date. We will, if you need help applying for unemployment, you can do this with Brenda at the office. And so we've just been communicating with the guys the whole
Good.
way. Um, we heard about this PPP loan very early on. Um, and we were just watching our bank to see when it became live. So on Saturday, we, worked all day pulling everything together and getting that applied. And then, we've just constantly, our attitude is squeaky wheel gets the oil. So we're, emailing our banker. And
Good.
I'm sure there's not a lot that he can do about it because we bank with a bank called Key Bank. But, we're letting him know, hey, is there anything more we can do with this? Because we want him to be watching over it. I have a landscaper friend in, I think in Kentucky, and she's already had her loan approved, and she's already got her SBA loan number. I've
Okay.
got friends other places that are just kind of waiting. So we know that our loan has been accepted. Um, yeah. And so, gosh, what else are we doing? Yeah, that's it's right now. That's the main thing, is that
Yeah.
PPP loan. Um, so our CP, if we're hoping we get it qualified, we really don't think it, if it all comes through, that we'll get paid out until May, and
Yeah.
that's when we'll be back to work.
Yeah.
Um, so there's a part of me that's like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna kind of hold on to that money, and I'll use that money to kind of handle that dip that I was talking about, kind of
Yeah.
the time where our current jobs run out and before like we have new jobs.
Makes sense. No,
Yeah.
that's good. It's a good plan. More of a bridge, right? So that's
Yeah.
really. I was watching another podcast, or not a podcast, a webinar yesterday, and they were talking about these being bridges, and if this, the social distancing and the economy and all this stuff, this whole thing lasts longer than they're expecting. This, 8 weeks or whatever. That there's going to be extensions to this stimulus, and there's going to be extensions to all of this. This is kind of happening as it's going. So I expect there are things to happen and bumps to come along the road, but it looks like Andrea here said, "That's me. They got their PPP through." So yeah, she's watching along. And
Hi, Andrea.
thanks, Alan, for cross posting this over to Green Meridian. Those guys, Alan and the crew over there have been doing a fantastic job keeping people up to date with all the PPP changes and all of that. So thank you, Alan, for that. It's been huge. Been watching through a lot of that. It's been very helpful because there's so much out there going on now that we just don't know what's coming next, right? And it's tough to disseminate how it fits into our business, or to kind of filter it all down to a point where we say, okay, now that makes sense for me, or can this be included or not? So again, thanks, Alan, for all that extra help. It's been huge. So back a little bit more into the business side of things. So how important it is for you guys that in your business to have a well-oiled, executable sales strategy, or something that you can count on. How important that is for your business growth?
Yeah. Well, I talking to you today, talking about this, it's like I feel right now um, I have half of it in place. I have a great sales process
Mm-hmm.
once somebody has like nibbled on a hook. Um, and from there on, it's like, man, I'm so proud of our sales process. What I'd consider like a sales funnel or like a lead generator, it's like I don't have anything in place
Yeah.
other than what my sales funnel in the past has been. We've done a little bit of advertising, but it's always been kind of happy clients, happy architects, happy contractors, and the
Mm-hmm.
really great projects we've done. But there's never been a plan, and that has fed this company really, really well for
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
years. But now I'm like, oh man, I feel kind of naive and a little foolish to be
Yeah.
where I am. So that's, I mean, right, with this disruption, one of the things I'm trying every day just to devote an hour to like dreaming, to thinking, to listening to a new podcast. Just because, this is an answer to prayer for me, to be able to like step back and have time to kind of think about the focus and the direction of the company. Because
Yeah.
I've never been like, I'm not a great like business leader or business mind. I should have never started a business 20 years ago. It's just like I wanted to build gardens. I'd never
Yeah.
wanted to run a business. And it's just in the last few years that I'm like, my job is to like run a business. I'm not, it's not to build gardens, it's to run a business and have other people perform these great roles to design and build gardens. Um, but that's, we've got a 20-year-old machine now that we're trying to retool differently, and that's
Mhm.
it's hard and it takes a lot of work. And so to
Yeah.
have this disruption and to have this break for me to get back and to really have just some dedicated time to think kind of high level, it's been such a blessing. um,
I love that you think of that way, because
yeah.
I was thinking about this, and I had some conversations with people about when in this, we're outdoor living, landscape design build, when do we ever have time to slow down in spring?
Yeah.
When has that ever happened? I've been in this business 24 years now, and I have never had a time in a spring where I'm like, you know what? I'm actually gonna go for a walk today. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like just, and I see so many people taking advantage of that because I think as an industry that we're just so open to the beauty of nature, and we see this a lot. Most of us at least see this as an opportunity to embrace it a bit, right? Because we're normally all balls to the wall right now, and all we see is daylight and darkness, right? And we're just going wide open, putting out fires and building awesome places, and so it's really nice to have that time down. So I'm glad you're appreciating that and feeling blessed, especially with a young family and all. I mean, you can take the time and be with them, and that same with me being here with the kids. It's really fun. It's fun. It's really great.
Yeah.
Let's see. What is one piece of advice that you give to other design build or design manage companies out there in our industry? What one piece of advice would be helpful?
Yeah. It's not profound, but it's share and give and be open. Um,
Mhm.
you mentioned some of the people that are on this podcast, Lisa Port and Alan Burke. Um, they're all part of this Washington APLD
Mhm.
email chain, and I have gotten like so much out of that.
Yeah.
And I work with some little small like concrete contractors, and different little contractors, and these guys are scared scentless. And I send everybody as much relevant information that I think is kind of good for them. um, I think there's an opportunity. um, I know a great landscape design build guy in Seattle, and he actually slowed down before this hit, but I'm planning to rent his track hoe for him when we start getting back to work. And I think we have opportunity to share equipment, possibly
Mhm.
share crews. If there are people that are busy and people that aren't busy, like we just all need to kind of share and embrace each other. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's, I mean, it's been amazing for me to see just how open people are, and they want to help each other where it's neighbors, and that's just, we're going to get through this. Not but And I've had a few inquiries. um, I actually have had a few, and I've just referred them on to people recently.
Mhm. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you know what, I've got 3 months worth of work. Like Carlos, he doesn't have any.
Yeah.
You should talk to Carlos over here. So
Yeah.
I think share, and just a fundamental belief that, like, we're all here to help each other.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. That's one thing that I think we're going to see out of this entire virus time is that we're going to see humans become more human, more connected. So the more they try to separate us, the more we're going to become connected back to through different venues, like through these types of video chats or through whatever it might be. But we're all deep down, we all have that need to help each other. We all want to help, and so that is really beautiful. I really appreciate you sharing that. And Lisa Port says, Scott, you're my hero.
Oh,
And Dwayne and Isabel are watching too, and they say, but they've been enjoying this nice weather, and it's a blessing as well to be out and just enjoy a little bit of time during our craziest time. It's really amazing. So, how do you think that this, virus or this we'll call it this event, how do you think it's going to change our industry long term?
I
I know
don't
we
know.
touched on some of
Like,
this, but yeah.
I think none of us know. We have never experienced anything like this. Like,
Yeah.
we just don't know. But I do have a few thoughts.
Okay.
I just got to get to that page on my notes. Oh, so I mean, here's something I think I do know. The truth is, if you've got the work, you're going to have a larger pool of talent to pull from.
Yep.
Because they're like my father, who's the father-in-law, who's the general manager at Willow's Lodge. Not far from Alan Burke's um, business. It's like, man, are people really going to be going back to hotels very quickly?
Yeah.
And so if you have the work and you need, are in the position to hire people, like, when have we been landscapers in the last 5 years where we've been able to hire really good people in the
Yeah.
spring? It's been
Yeah.
challenging. So I think
Yeah.
that is kind of a possible kind of short term, kind of really exciting piece, and then
Yeah.
get these people kind of hooked on what we do with our great
Mhm.
businesses and working outdoors. I think that's like a really great opportunity.
I love that. Yeah,
Like long
absolutely.
term, I think we're going to be more in demand, and
Mhm.
maybe it's not going to be, the huge projects we've doing, but they're going to be projects that are going to be maybe in some way even more like meaningful and kind of impactful for people. And maybe it's the $35,000 kind of patio instead of the $85,000, but it's a chance to like, people are going to, they're not taking a vacation, and instead they're investing in their backyard. And um, so I think long term, like, I think this, I don't want to say positive, but I think we're going to benefit. I think
Yeah.
landscape designers and landscape installers and design build companies, we're all going to benefit from this.
No, I
It's
absolutely
just,
agree. Yeah.
how do we just kind of, you know, just go through the kind of this dark period?
Mhm. Well, it's more the uncertainty, right? It's not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel yet.
Yeah.
It's assuming certain things, and I think that's where our clients right now, they're, instead of dropping the big bucks on projects, they're kind of holding back, thinking, I just need to get a sense of clarity. I need clarity on what this means. Is the market going to come back? Is my 401k going to come back? When is that going to be the case? When is this over? When can we go back to life as usual? There's no defined point. That the government's trying to give us those dimensions, if you will, and say, 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks, whatever. But until there's a clear time frame or a very clear example of seeing that curve round down and saying, okay, good, we got 4 weeks, guys. After that, we can just lift all the gates, everybody goes. If that was the case, I think that everybody would be sitting back okay with it. People would start thinking about spending. I think that's when it's going to start opening back up for us. With interest rates being as low as they are right now, getting money's not that tough, and it's cheap. So I think that there's a good opportunity there, but it's a matter of them not feeling, homeowners, that is, not feeling the anxiety of not knowing what's coming next and not having that clarity. Once that clarity piece is in place, I think that's when the launch is going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do think that for sure. Any other thoughts you want to share with us, Scott?
Oh, well, I mean, I've said this a number of times. I think there's a huge opportunity right
Yeah.
now for people to learn. I think some of the things that right now we're being required to do are going to become best practices as we move forward.
Yeah.
We are fundamentally changing, um, like, our design process right now and the level of designs that we're producing. And the truth is, when somebody's hired us for a design, we already know that they want us for the installation.
Yeah.
And so we've realized it's like we don't have to have like absolute phenomenal top quality presentation drawings. We can have simpler, better, or just really nice, good drawings because we're not selling them. We've already sold them on working with us. And so, yeah, I think I think we're all going to like realize these things that we're doing now are going to be, a lot of them are going to become our best practices.
Yeah.
And so I think there's such like opportunity to kind of step back, breathe, kind of learn. Um, yeah, and just kind of dream a little bit right now about like, what do you really want? And do those things that, you've not had time to do in the past, whether it's, you've mentioned kind of webinars. I've been taking a bunch of workshops and webinars and
Yeah.
just trying to feed myself from a lot of different perspectives.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's really cool. I mean, right now, if you're not sharpening your tools, I mean, I've said this a million times, that if you're not out there in the shed sharpening your tools, getting ready for spring, once winter is over, we're going to call this time winter, but once that's over and spring always comes. So if you're not sharpening your tools and working on, how you're going to present yourself and communicate to your clients through marketing, or whether it's about your sales process and how things could be better, or even your design process and thinking about how you used to do it versus how you are doing it now and how that'll change once you go back to normal, right? And what things you're going to hold on to and which ones you're going to let go. I know I'm certainly not offended by sitting in my office talking to a client 2 hours away, excuse me, versus driving all that distance, 2 hours there, 2 hours back, right? So we started working with Zoom calls before this even hit, and now we're doing them even more now with different levels. So I think it's forcing us to really, really evaluate how things are being done, and they're becoming more efficient, not less efficient. The only thing that would be potentially the crews. If you had a 3-man crew and it's got to go to 1 or 2, things take longer. But I think I mean, I trust you will, but I think most of us will also figure out ways to make that one person more effective and more efficient. We have to, right? We're here all to win, so we have to just keep adapting to the different rules that are being dropped on us as we go. But that's super important. I know that we spoke before about you were looking into this concept of story brand, the book, and some of their stuff they've been working with. We adopted that here and Master Plan back in the fall, and started working with them and through Donald Miller's work. And I just have to say to any of the landscape design build companies out there, get the book. It's called Story Brand, Building a Story Brand. There's some really interesting things you can do in there to fine tune your communication, your method of communication to your clients. And it works across all the different levels. So it's really kind of cool. They also have another whole section about, different lead funnels and things like that to figure out how you can communicate once the client reaches out, set up whole systems. Like there's a lot there. It's worth the read for sure. And I wanted to get your feedback a little bit. I know you've done a little bit with their workshop, what your thoughts were so far on what they're presenting.
Well, I was introduced to Story Brand, a week and a half ago. So it's all
Yeah.
new. They
Yeah.
had this online 2-day workshop. It was, $1,000. And one of the things that they really talk about is, building a sales funnel. And I was curious more than anything. And I'm like, well, $1,000. It's like, I think
Yeah.
I can do that. Right. So,
Yeah.
and what it ultimately, what I think it helps you do is going through this 2-day workshop. The first day was very, at the end of the day, I was like, I don't kind of see where all this is going. I kind of see, but it's still a little foggy for me. And then the second day, it's like it all clicked in. But it's basically, it's a way when I started this conversation, I was like, I used to be a lane changer, and I'm not a lane changer anymore. We've kind of identified our niche, and it's a way for companies to really think about what sets them apart,
Yeah.
how are they set apart, and kind of what's their story behind that. And the idea of using a story to kind of convey your personality to your client.
Yeah.
And in the story brand, um, their approach to marketing, they really see the person selling the service as the guide, um, and your client is, they consider that your client is your hero, and it's you as a guide are really supposed to take the hero kind of through whatever journey, whether it's designing a garden, buying a product, or really take them through this kind of sales process. And it's really interesting kind of how they do it, um, and how it can help really, um, differentiate your company from the competition. And it was, it was really kind of fascinating and illuminating for me. And it, um, it just kind of told me, like, Scott, you're kind of on the right track, and it's still okay to really have a niche, and you
Mhm.
don't have to be everything to everybody. And
Yep.
if you want to be everything to everybody, that's okay. You just kind of develop a different story
Yeah.
around that, and that's okay too. Um,
That's
so
great. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not I'm not employed by those guys in any way, shape, or form, but I know that it's been pretty substantial for us here at Master Plan, and that's why I wanted to share it with everybody. During this downtime, if you get a copy of it and you read it, or even he's got a great podcast too, Donald Miller. I listen to him quite often. You mentioned podcasts earlier about filling your
Yeah.
mind with stuff. He interviews a lot of really cool people, and I guess he actually interviewed or worked with or something somebody that you know from a project or something. Did you mention that, like a restaurant or something?
Yeah. He, one of his podcasts, interviewed Mark and Brian Canlis, who own one of the West Coast's kind of top fine dining restaurants,
Mhm.
and they and their family have been kind of long-term clients for us.
Nice.
Um, yeah, and then he actually, I mean, one of the interesting things is you know, and you hear lots of people talking about how our company's kind of pivoting right now to take advantage of, um, kind of, opportunities, and he used them as an example. They used to be a fine dining restaurant, and they will be that again, but, during the first few weeks of it's kind of the when this was swelling up, they closed their fine dining portion of their restaurant, and they have a really unique setup, and they've got a beautiful porte cochere that you can drive through the front of their restaurants, and they started selling burgers out of the restaurant, and they had
Yeah.
like a 2 hour wait during
Wow.
lunchtime,
Wow.
burgers and tuna fish sandwiches. And then they started doing at home meal delivery. They call it
Mhm.
their family meal. And so the whole point of that was, it's like this company was really fast on their feet, and they kind of looked for an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
like, what are the opportunities for us as landscape designers, landscape installers?
Mhm.
Like, we haven't kind of come up with it yet, but um, there might be different opportunities that kind of send you in different directions. And maybe somebody that does just design only can offer, $100 1 hour, you know FaceTime design consultations, or
Yeah.
send me I mean, I think there's some kind of exciting, or potentially kind of side opportunities if people think differently.
Absolutely. And an
Yeah.
event like this forces us to think differently. So now we're, as humans, we become much more, we're good at adapting. Let's put it that way. So it's fun to see some of the most creative and how they solve problems like that. And like exactly like you said, they pivoted. They're like, we are fine dining, but now we're going to do burgers because it keeps the grills going and it keeps the guys working. And we're still creating revenue. We're still creating value. At the end of the day, all it is about creating value for your client. And if you can create the most value for your client, you win. It's that simple.
Yeah.
So it's the old story that you need to fall in love with your ideal client, not your product or service, because your ideal client will change. But if your product or service doesn't, you won't follow them. So if you
Yeah.
follow them and let everything else flow with it, what else do you need?
Yeah.
We've got to be fine-tuned and tied in and asking those good questions to those clients and finding out what's working and what's not working. Because as they're shifting and pivoting through these times, we need to be prepared to be able to solve problems. That's what we do best, right? We're designers. We solve problems. So we talked earlier about how do we make working at home more comfortable and more fun and more exciting. Like, how much better could it be than to have an awesome backyard and be able to sit back there and work, have a nice desk, whatever it might be, and be able to sit out there and look out at the pool, and you have the air blowing in your face. You feel like you're in Bermuda working in your own backyard. I mean, that's a hell of a lot better than a cubicle or
Yeah.
a 2-hour commute back and forth. So these things are all changing in people's minds. So it's our job as leaders to start creating those environments for people to live in and to love and to really thrive and see their family grow in. So that's really, it's really cool stuff that we have such an opportunity right now, such an opportunity for all of us.
Well, let me kind of say, and I'm happy to keep talking, but um, I just want to kind of share 4 or 5 other pieces, because I talked about sharing, um, that have been really pivotal in the last kind of 4 or 5 years as I've developed my business, and I've gone from trying to be like, um, well, when I've really just focused on the business and really creating a business that can run itself. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't have anything to do with any of these companies, but one, um, we use budgeting and estimating software from the Landscape Management Network. It's LMN.
Yeah.
Their website is golmn.com.
Mhm.
And for me, that has been revolutionary. If anybody wants to follow up with me after this and ask questions, I just like it was a life changer for me.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and we budget all of our jobs through LMN. We can budget them so quickly. All the guys do their timesheets through an LMN app. It syncs with QuickBooks. It's one of the best things I've done for my business. I um, I use a business coach. I have a business coach that I meet twice a week. Twice a week. Sorry, that sounds like a shrink. Uh, Twice a month, right?
Yeah.
And this guy, he doesn't really know anything about the landscape world,
Mhm.
which is great. But he's somebody that is really good at like developing people and pointing out my weaknesses and helping me kind of set goals and focusing on. And I would encourage anybody that's interested in kind of developing themselves is have a really good coach, or kind of possibly a mentor.
Yeah.
um, Another piece of my business that's been really helpful, um, we work with an open book management coach,
Mhm.
and you guys can kind of look at what it is. Open book management is um, a style of kind of financial sharing with your employees, but that's something that's really been beneficial to me. And it makes it ultimately that with open book management, um, it's ultimately a way to kind of profit share with your employees. And that's just really helped me to see the business differently. Um, and then, I mentioned earlier there's this Washington APLD kind of text chain, um, and or sorry, email chain, and the amount of sharing on that is phenomenal. I'm part of a group of business owners from around the country. And we kind of formed, Josh, you were a part of this a few years ago. We kind of formed a number of years ago, and we meet once a month, and everybody takes a topic, and we share about that different topic. And we talk to each other throughout, the week on a text message chain.
Yep.
We now actually meet every Sunday at noon, Seattle time, 3 o'clock, East Coast time, and we're just all sharing kind of what we're doing right now with COVID-19. So I would encourage people to kind of assemble smaller little groups.
Yeah.
And I think it's better if you do it through APLD or something, but have kind of smaller groups, but not with people in your direct region,
Yeah.
people outside of your region that you can really share openly with.
Yeah.
And those are probably the 4 or 5 things that have been really key for me kind of developing my business and kind of pushing it forward. Because I started by saying, man, I should have never started a business. Like
Yeah.
I just like designing and building stuff. And it's been a
Yeah.
really slow process.
Yeah, no doubt. I think all of us feel that way at times, right? We're like, we went into this because we were the artist, right? We
Yeah.
just wanted to build cool shit. We wanted to design cool stuff. We wanted to hear yes. We wanted to make some money, and then it started to become something different, where you had to employ people and you had bigger ideas. And next thing you know, you're now running a business, as you've mentioned many times. And you don't always get your chance to go out there and design and get your design chops kind of cut and to be able to go out there and swing a hammer or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's benefits to all that, but you're right. Some of that is lost as things grow. I want to get back to the coach side of things. I believe that having at least one coach in your life is super important. They keep constantly keeping you accountable to the things that you are, that you say you're going to do or want to do. Because how many times does this happen to everybody, right? It's the first of the year. You're going to set your goals for the year, and then all of a sudden it's the end of the year, and none of them happened. And you're like, great, this is what I'm going to do for my business. I was going to do this for my health. I was going to do this with the family. And then you're like, yeah, it didn't happen because you didn't have anybody to hold you accountable. When you have somebody in your life that's going to keep your ass to the fire and it's going to say, look, no matter what happens, you're going to get this done because you told me you're going to, it becomes something different. Because it's easy for us to let ourselves down, but it's not easy to let somebody else down. For some reason, it's part of the human psychology. So I actually have 4 different coaches and different skill sets. They're not all business coaches, but and I find that they are so, so valuable to have in my life, and they keep pushing me further. And, when I hit a roadblock where my mind says, I can't do this, or I've never done that, they help me through that. And next thing you know, I'm doing it. You know what I mean? So it's super important. And, I can recommend that for anybody out there, but having the right equipment, you mentioned Element and all their technology and how that's helped your business. That's all that stuff that you can have a machine or a software package do for you. So it frees you up to do more stuff that you love to do. Is going to just make you happier. I mean, you really can't go wrong with that. Alan Burke writes here, my backyard looks like Puerto Rico right now, and not in a good way. And Kyle Stevens here, he says, I'm excited and inspired from this meeting today. Kyle, I just saw your insanely cool PVC gate that you made. I can't wait to design something like that in one of my designs as well. So he wanted to give you a shout out for that one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So if anybody else has any other questions, we'll hold it here for another minute or two, and then I'm going to let Scott go so we can get back to his beautiful family and back to life in Seattle. How's the weather over there right now?
Oh man, beautiful.
Nice.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's great. How's the temperatures been for you?
Temperatures?
Yeah.
I think it's kind of supposed to get towards the 60s today. I mean, it's been nice.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's great. Pennsylvania's been similar, which is kind of strange for the beginning of April. We've been very blessed. And that's kind of the weird part about this year with COVID is we didn't have a winter. We barely had snow. It was warm the entire year. Totally love that, right? But okay, then this happens, right? So it's like this really, 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 really long kind of winter spring thing. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll take it as it is. Blessed to have every day. And I don't see other questions coming in. So thank you, Scott, so much for coming on and helping everybody out. I hope everybody had a great time and that you guys all learned something today or could take something back to your business and implement it. If you have any questions, even after this, you can reach out to the chain as well. Scott did mention about, setting up groups. I've been part of that mastermind group that we set up years ago. It was at least 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
With everybody there when where were we when we set that up? That was
DC.
DC.
Yeah.
And that was really cool. It's been huge for me personally. And, if anybody's looking to set something like that up and they want to get started with it, they can reach out here to Yes Express and we can get that rolling with them to get to set up that group there. We can set up like that as well to help others, be able to communicate to each other. So no one out there, no professionals out there feel like they're an island and that there's no one there to help them. And they feel like, that there's no one to connect to because they aren't part of the groups or whatever. We'll make it happen. We'll get you set up with somebody to talk to or a group or something in order to keep you rolling forward because we're all in this together. It's our job to make sure that we all survive through this and that we all thrive through this. We are only going to do it together. So let's keep focused. Let's keep lifting each other up. Scott, it's been a pleasure today. Thank you so much for spending all your time. And everybody, keep doing it.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Josh.
See you later, Scott.
Thanks.
Thank you.